Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for making it. Let me just quickly introduce myself, Susheel Sethumadhavan. I'm a partner with Kearney. We're a management consulting firm, and I personally lead the advanced analytics and AI practice for us here in the Middle East and Africa. I'm joined by an illustrious panel here. Nour Hasan is the CEO of Tarjama. It's the company that is really disrupting the language and translation industry with AI. We're also joined by Ahmad from Google. He leads the data science efforts for Google in MENA and Turkey. And he also has the enviable experience and pleasure of helping startups here in the region as well. And then we have Ajith Nayar, who is the CEO and co-founder of CamCom. He told me that CamCom is the first company with low-code, no-code computer vision as a solution. But what I like to believe is that he's doing more good stuff with cameras and computer vision than any other company that I know. So, the intent of this conversation really is to have a very invigorating conversation and really help startups understand how to integrate AI into their business and also how to think of new strategies to scale their business using AI as well. So, first round of questions across the panel. How critical is AI to your core business?
Thank you very much first. So I think when we talk about AI, it's very important because it's extremely broad. From a terminology point of view, and AI is extremely expensive for companies to start building or integrating. For Tarjama, for example, AI is in the core of what we do. Machine translation is disrupting the industry. And it's very important to integrate it in a business that's related to translation. Otherwise, you will end up using it as a third party and then do like a hybrid model between machine translation, post-editing with human. So for Tarjama, we've been actually integrating machine learning and AI for the past 2 years. We have an AI and data science team. We built our own machine translation engine of very high quality business, I would say, machine translation based on all the data that we've been accumulating over the years. That's from one aspect. The other aspect is how do you integrate AI to automate the process? How do you integrate AI to make things faster? So for the time being, we're even like integrating AI on automatic assigning of documents to the large translators instead of just assigning it with human. And this is like the second layer of what we've been doing.
Yeah, I think for Google, the journey has been like a revolution. In the past decade, we've changed every single product into using AI. It's not only on the product as you see, but every small department, every small project, we think about automation and we think about how doing things smart, whether using AI or other tools. So it has changed lots of things, even the most effective one, like even search, 10 years ago, search was like rocking and it was like the precision was great and things. We still sit down and we change that into much more effective one. So, yeah.
Thank you. For CamCom, AI is core to our business. I mean, we are an AI company, if I may say it so. We deal obviously with a smaller sub-segment of AI called computer vision. But technology and specifically artificial intelligence is an imperative in the way that businesses are being rolled out, in the way that businesses essentially strive for efficiency. What we are also trying to build out is essentially bringing the power of artificial intelligence to increase efficiencies and drive business growth from the three tenets, right? Customer satisfaction, revenues, and profitability. So to answer the question, is AI core to our business? Absolutely. It is the business that we are in. And is it core to any other business? Most functions will become. And over a period of time, I think it's just an imperative. You have to live with it.
And, Nour, you started to explain the evolution of AI at Tarjama. I'm curious to understand if you have applied any specific strategies to scale your business with AI.
Absolutely. So, for our business to scale, the amount of words you do as an output, you need to add more translators, which means it's very, like, I would say, human intensive, cost intensive, and productivity has a limit from a time point of view. So it was so important to increase productivity by leveraging the machine translation part, and then the productivity of the translator themselves, because we built a machine learning model, a CAT tool, which is a translation management system that the translators used to increase the productivity and to basically store the data. And from that, you build your machine translation as step number 2. So it was very important to integrate that with the human in order to increase productivity. So we managed, like, for example, a customer that we used to do 1 million words a month to 11 million in 1 month.
Excellent. And Ajith, I was, with regards to kind of strategies, right? It's always the thought of how do you become more competitive and what is that edge you create for yourself, right? So how do you think of AI in terms of giving yourself and your company that competitive edge and scaling your returns?
It's an evolving thing, right? As I said, we are in the business of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and using that in the area of computer vision. Does AI and ML and, of course, deep learning give us a moat as a startup? Does it give us a moat to start off with? Maybe. It essentially depends on what is being put to use. Finally, technology for the sake of technology is not going to get you anywhere. It necessarily has to translate into an ROI. And once a customer see that and what you've built gives you definitely a certain amount of extensibility. If you have taken it beyond the pale, obviously the scalability comes in. I mean, I'll give you a simple example of one of the customers that we deal with in India. It's an e-commerce retailer, the largest e-commerce retailer. They had a 7% return issue because the wrong product was being shipped out. You asked for a blue shirt, you got a black shirt. Now, 7% may not sound much, but 7% of 180 million is a lot. So the problem is reverse logistics costs are 6x that of onward logistics cost. 100,000 square feet, 21 feet vertical stacking warehouses with a 7% return essentially means that it's dead stock, right? To get rid of the problem, you can throw more people at it, but how do you invert 150,000 products on a daily basis, doing multi-way matches on the product so that the right product is correctly binned? We offered our solution, which enabled them intensive and immense nonlinear scalability, because then you're not throwing people at the problem. You are essentially just adapting technology to ensure that the returns came down to zero. So extensibility is definitely something that you can get by leveraging technology correctly. On the flip side, there was a customer who came and asked, can you help us identify fruit fly larvae in gherkins? Absolutely, can be done. But the thing is there an ROI in it? The answer is no, because hyperspectrometry camera will probably cost you close to about $250,000, a good one. I mean, so is there really any kind of ROI in it? The answer is no. A lot of people say, don't reinvent the wheel. I'm a person who says that you should allow people to reinvent the wheel, because the moment you say don't reinvent the wheel, you put a cap on imagination. But there are times when you shouldn't reinvent the wheel as well, because it does not make sense from a business perspective.
Very good. And, that's a lot of innovation. And, startups generally are kind of restricted with regards to the investment in innovation, whereas Google is not. So,
well, it is. It's actually, I see it the other way around. I see the startup, they have the freedom to do more things in a more innovative way. Google is so large that every single idea have been applied maybe 10 or 100 times. So it's a different story, but different challenges. But one of the things that I've seen at Google is the engineering culture. Is that when we build something, we build it so that anyone can use it in the in other teams. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel sometimes. Basically, the same language model you can use for translation, you can use for search, you can use for other solutions. In fact, Google Cloud, as it is, do you think that we thought, okay, let's go and develop it? No, it was actually the internal tools that we built, that we exchanged it across all teams, across all products, and then we thought, oh, let's go and commercialize, make this commercial and make it accessible to startups and businesses.
And that's, there was not an intent. My question was following that, which is, given the scale of potential investment opportunity, how can startups think of Google as a partner, or any product and service company as a partner in scaling their own AI capabilities?
I would say there's two things. Like, first of all, you need to have your data strategy before AI strategy. So what data you will have in 5 years and 10 years, and then how you're going to use this data, right? In a smart way, whether using it to artificial intelligence or others. You might start with a hybrid approach, mixing human translation with the machine translation, and then take it from there. So having a strategy is the first thing. The second thing, which I think Google or all tech companies, they make available, the tools for you to scale and, use the API, the trained API. You might want to train your own, algorithm or optimize your own algorithm at some stage. But reusing what exists is actually much easier for you as a benchmark. You can take it as a benchmark and then take it further. So basically, reusing that is very effective. And another point, not around Google, but also we are very privileged that we have open source. Every single research paper, every single talk now is not being approved without opening open source, having everything in the code and everything. So you can definitely replicate that and start from where others have already done for you the job and, the code and everything. So
an extension of that question is, how are you seeking the demand from the startups, right? How do you evaluate what to invest in, how to prioritize products that startups can actually use?
I mean, again, Google is a global company, It has so much investment. We have a mix between moonshot stuff, like self-driving cars, and business-related. I work directly with a marketing client. So my team works in transforming the marketing clients and the startup business as well. So the mix is basically, it depends on the context, but also in the opportunity. So for example, Nour's team is working on Arabic translation, which is very novel, very new, and research has been there for a long time, but technology is not picking up. So we need a startup like Nour as one, or someone who takes the code and then rerun it and then do the job for that. Google cannot cover everything. That's the thing. That's why it's much easier to compete with big tech companies if you have a specific task and specific problem to solve from a startup perspective.
That's very good. And talking about demand, it's all about the customer, right? So especially for a startup like you and for most startups, how do you embed AI into the customer journey, improve it, the experience in itself?
Absolutely. I just want to, before answering this, I want to tap on what he just said because it's so important. When we started building machine translation, we got a lot of questions from people. Do you want to compete with Google? You can never compete with Google. We kept saying we cannot compete and we're not planning on competing, but we are building niche. We're starting with one pair of language, which is Arabic, English, English, Arabic. We have the data, which is extremely high quality in certain domains. So it is completely different than what they offer. And this is so important. When it comes to customer journey, what we offer today, we are a solution company. It's not only we just translate documents for customers. We look into the struggles. So for example, one e-commerce client wanting to scale from 1 million SKUs a month to 11. How do you do that without AI? So we built for them a custom MT machine translation specifically for e-commerce to help them expedite their workload. So we integrate a lot of solutions that we do for customers in order to get them to where they want to go. Even the way we communicate with customers, we no longer want to use emails. So we built a portal as a gateway for clients to have a dashboard. They can eventually see their workload, pay online. The way we integrate with them is more innovative.
And how has adoption been from the customer side? How do they accept, adopt, and absorb the technology and the innovation that you're bringing?
So there's a lot of awareness that needs to happen with clients. So we spend a lot of time educating customers, especially when you talk to them about machine translation. No, we don't want machine translation. We don't want Google Translate. This is not accurate privacy quality. So you have to keep explaining to the customers that this is not what it is. Please, you need to try it. Machine translation sometimes is more accurate than just giving it to a junior translator, for example. It's more cost efficient. So there is adoption. I am seeing a lot of improvement in the way customers take SaaS solutions or technology than before. On the contrary, some clients come to us and say, if there's cost saving, productivity increase, please help.
And extending on that, I'm going to keep sticking on the customer for a little bit longer, because it's also diversity of customer, right?
Absolutely.
In many cases, startups are looking at what's my focus, who's my target. But as the business grows, the diversity increases.
Correct.
And how do you kind of then apply AI to ensure that it cannot be a one size fits all, but how does it address that diversity?
So if I take our clients, we don't service every single vertical in the world or category of clients. We have certain clients that we go and focus on. We actually customize models for our clients, so it is customized instead of it's generic. And this is something that we've been applying.
Right. Now moving away from the customer a little bit, more on the cost side, the operation side. So Ajith, as any startup would, it also needs to optimize what's we call below the skin, what's not visible, the operation side, the cost aspects. How have you leveraged AI to address your non-core parts of the business?
Very interesting question. But before that, let me just add to what Nour said and what Ahmed said. Ahmed, I'll hold you to this, because literally every VC that I've gone to has asked me this question. What if Google comes in? My standard response to that was, well, you are in the business. There are a lot of other VCs as well. Why are you there? But now that you have, as he said, that Google is not coming into a game, thank you. I will hold you to that. And I'll actually quote you on it. As far as non-core business areas are concerned, I took over as a CEO of CamCom in Jan. Before that, my designation was CMO. Most people actually thought that meant Chief Marketing Officer. It wasn't. It was Chief Miscellaneous Officer. There is no marketing officer at CamCom. When we set up CamCom, we were very clear that the only thing we will focus on is building out a CVAS platform, computer vision as a service platform. Marketing was handed over to a third-party agency who uses a significant amount of AI in automating the whole process, right from the logo that you see to the various social media campaigns and every other collateral artifacts that have been created, to even the PowerPoint presentations and flyers. I think they use an underlying AI platform, which I believe is powered by Google, to generate that. Finance. We don't have a chief financial officer who is a part and parcel of CamCom. That has been outsourced. We don't have a human resources director. That has been outsourced. So outside of I'm the only non-engineer in a team of 43. I went to hotel school. I keep telling people Java for me is good coffee. It's got nothing to do with technology. But all the others are hardcore engineers whose only and sole focus is building this out. As we scale, things may change. But as a startup, I think it's an important thing for most startups to take a step back and actually understand, where should I focus on? What is the point in trying to get compliance right if you don't know how to do it? Find somebody who can do it for you. Or if you can't get translation right, please go to Nour and get the translation right.
Yeah.
Because it is not your core competency. That is not what you're trying to build out. So, that is how we essentially looked at it.
You hit on a point about people, right? You were the chief miscellaneous officer. There were a lean team, like most startups do. Nour, I was curious about how with the adoption and the scaling of AI has your talent acquisition strategy changed? We hear of AI replacing people, but what it potentially does is actually focuses your talent acquisition into specific skills. So how has that changed for you and your company?
Well, from the Tarjama's perspective, we did not think of AI as a replacement for our team members or talent or resources. What we actually looked at increasing efficiency. So integrating AI with the team is all about increasing efficiency from the current team members. And what AI allows you to do is it allows you to look at the caliber of the talent you have, where you have superb talent that can work very well with machine translation post-editing, because this is a skill that you need to teach to translators, and there are a lot of translators that resist the machine. So this is where you need to adapt the strategy from that perspective. And on the talent acquisition from the AI perspective, it's finding good data scientists, and I'm sure in the region is not something that's easy. So luckily we have a superb machine learning AI team, 60% of which are women. So it's great. But we have our chief scientist from abroad. So we had to shift strategy-wise by looking outside the region from a talent acquisition attraction point of view.
Very good. So that's the people side.
Yeah.
Ahmad, about process and tools and process and technology. What are some of the watch-outs or maybe best practices that startups can think of when sourcing the right technology?
Yeah, I would also want to comment on sourcing the right talent, because I see it as a trend. I've been at Google for 10 years, and I saw how the talent's being hired. One of the things is that we focus in the technology when we hire. If you look at LinkedIn and you see the job description, it's all technology, like MapReduce, Kafka, whatever, Google Cloud, whatever tools that you are having. And then you have one line about the theory. I value the theory because the theory doesn't change that much. If someone has the theory right, then they will adapt any new technology, right? So if there is a new technology that's coming up, and we're living in a time like the other day there is a new research, new paper, a new machine translation model that completely changed what was before. So you need a generalist when you hire an AI. You need someone who understands the theory. For me, statistics and the theory of the algorithm is much more important than someone who has done big data job before. And this one on the short term will be more helpful for me. But the other one on the long term will be, I think that's the investment. In terms of tools and technologies, there's so many options. But again, it all I can't generalize. It all depends on the items and the parameters you have. If you have the team and resources to go through building your own algorithm and optimizing it and winning patents, this will increase, the attraction for VCs and publishing research, open sourcing your code. This is increasing the valuation of your startup. Then definitely go for that. If you think you don't have enough talent, you don't have enough time, then it doesn't make any sense. One of the things the rules that we have at Google is that don't be afraid to launch a product without AI element. It can work, definitely, and it worked, right? So if you don't have enough expertise in this area, don't launch it, because you will be disappointed and you won't be able to adapt, and you will waste time in something that is not relevant to your business.
There was this anecdote about how the best coders are the ones who are trained in music. Because they have a sense of patience and they know exactly how to follow a specific rhythm and design and pattern, right? So I think over a period of time, there will also be a similar statistic on data scientists, potentially. Who are the best data scientists out there? And what was their background before they came into data science? No one's born a data scientist, right? So, we're 5 minutes to go, but I think what I wanted to do is just go around the panel and ask, If you had to advise one thing to do and one thing not to do in scaling your business using AI, what would that be? Now I have restricted to one thing. If you have more than one, I'm not going to stop you. But go ahead. What's the watch out? What should you be doing, and what should you not be doing?
I think the first thing you need to do is AI relevant to your business or not? Because AI can be expensive and you could be building something that is not core. And watch out from just building for the sake of building AI without looking at ROI. So for us in Tarjama, anything we build, we benchmark it to ROI. Is this going to generate income or not? Because we are a small company. I don't have enough R&D budget to just spend it left, right, and center. I need to be wise where I put my dollar.
That's what I meant by it's limitless.
Absolutely.
That's what I meant by that. But, nothing against you, Ahmad. But when you mention ROI, I'm thinking any suggestions, best practices on what that measurement is for you, not the metric. Saying how do you ensure that you are consistently keeping the ROI metric up?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are two ways to measure it. If you're building a product externally, you need to ship this product quickly to market and see if it's viable, if it's going to get you customers. If it's internal, for us, the machine translation, the first customer is Tarjama. So if we increase efficiency, if 40% of my translation today is MT without PE, that ticks a box. Once I start shipping it to the market, which we've done already, we have a widget on our website. We discovered the other day by coincidence. We don't do any PR or marketing for it. We have 22,000 people using it monthly. This means I'm going to ship a product to the market. So this is what a company needs to do.
Just before I answer your question, something that Ahmad said, based on the question that you asked, who do you hire? In CamCom, we have started hiring journalists, primarily with a background in math. That's all we are looking at. And yes, most of the people who play around with math also are fairly decent musicians. So interesting, that you brought in music there as well. I completely agree with what Nour says. Technology is an enabler. It's a facilitator of things. AI is not a panacea. Okay, it is not going to solve everything under the world for you. Finally, you live in the real world, and the reality check is, okay, is it going to give me back the money that I invested in it? Like I said, in the case of CamCom, it is slightly different because we are an AI company. It's a core. It's our imperative that we work with it. But when we take it out to the market, it necessarily has to make sense to people. So when I set out with my other co-founders on the journey of CamCom 6 years ago, when the initial idea came, if somebody told me AI, I would have said absolutely impossible because I didn't even know that it meant artificial intelligence. If I can learn, I'm sure everybody else can learn as well. But as you go through the journey, you have to keep asking that question to yourself. What am I doing and what is the end goal of this? If that necessarily has to result in value for the customer, then take that hard choice. If it is something that can be done without overcomplicating it, then don't complicate it. Keep it simple, so that anybody can do it.
Yeah, I think if AI is relevant, I think it will be relevant for almost every business. When the time you have to launch it in an iteration, but you need to have, I think for every product, you need to have a roadmap which involves the data, because this is exactly that feeds the intelligence of your product in the future. So you need to have that. You need to set up the infrastructure right in order to grow. And the infrastructure has to be privacy safe. It has to be these things, it takes time, but it's actually core of building any product. When I see a startup celebrating too soon about an algorithm or about something like this, I ask myself, where else they would take this, If they celebrated at this point, what else they will? Anyway, we're out of time, but I think my colleagues covered almost everything. So,
when I accepted this opportunity to be a moderator, I had two metrics. I should learn something new, and I should finish on time. So I think I've done both, and I hope the audience have done the same as well. And I appreciate your time, each of you, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. Not just asking questions, just having this conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.